Okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about History 1302, Reconstruction to the present time. This is where we start. The entire semester starts now. Something I want you to think about as we discuss today's lecture. I want you to think about the role that the Civil War plays in defining who we are today. How the Civil War began, how it ended, what were the repercussions of it. They all still have an effect on us today. Okay? How many guys have had 1301? Okay? Had 1301. Name for me a political party that was discussed in 1301.
Whigs.
The Whigs, okay. Another one?
Federalists.
Federalists, give me another one. Anti-Federalists, give me another one. Democrat, Republicans, oh, got the right name. I like him.
National Republicans.
National Republicans, the obscure one. What's another one? What?
Liberty Party.
Liberty Party, okay. Get into the Civil War. What else?
Green.
What?
Green.
Say it louder.
Green.
The Green Party? No, not for 1301.
Whigs.
Already said Whigs.
No.
Know Nothings. There you go. The Know Nothings. Oh, that's my favorite. The American Party, the Know Nothings. That's pretty good. All right. But what has happened since the end of the Civil War? What do we have from the beginning, this moment in time now, in the beginning of the semester, to where we are today? What do we have? What political parties do we have? Democrats and Republicans. That's it. That's it. Since the Civil War, it has been Democrats and it has been Republicans. Republicans, at the end of the Civil War, stood for nationalism, the Union above all, and the Democrats, state rights, 10th Amendment. Now, if you know anything about political parties today, you're like, wait a minute, that's the exact opposite of where they are today. You are correct, because times they are changing. And as a result, the political parties change as well. We'll discuss these as we get there. But because the nation is divided and then put back together, the political parties become static. And that is where they are today, Republicans and Democrats. All right? So let's talk about where we are. The Confederacy is defeated. What now? What should we do with the South? Should we make them pay? Should we punish them? Or should we just say, it's all right, come back into the fold. We're one again, we're brother and sister again, we're brothers, we're good. This is the issue that divides the nation as soon as the Civil War is over. Now, standing at the top of this pyramid, of this divisive issue, is our president, Abraham Lincoln. Because he is such an instrumental and unifying figure, he has an idea, and his idea is that we're going to bring them in and make it as painless as possible. More on that in a minute. The era we are going to enter into is Reconstruction. It is called Reconstruction because we are going to reconstruct the South and bring them back into the Union. Now, however, there has to be some repercussion because a lot of bad things happened in the Civil War. In May of 1865, a month after the Civil War is over, Jefferson Davis is captured in Mississippi. Who's Jefferson Davis? President of the Confederacy. So President of the Confederacy. He's brought back to Washington, D.C., and he stands trial in the civilian court. Now, here's the issue. What should happen to him? Patrick, what would you do if you were the North and here is the leader of the insurrection in the South on trial? What should happen to him?
He should be made an example of.
Okay, should be made an example of, and he should be shot and he should be killed.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody disagree? Okay, why do you... I keep wanting to call you Ethan. Your name is not Ethan, it is...
Jason.
Jason, all right.
Why would I not want to make it an example?
Yes.
Because that would anger the South.
Oh, it may anger the South. The war, the South, in the South, the Confederate Army had been defeated. The concept of independence had not. If you make a martyr out of Jefferson Davis, you have just started the war all over again. He is going to be he's going to be indicted, and he's going to be released on bail. Nothing will ever come of that indictment, because they do not want to send it to a jury. They don't want to deal with that issue. There are war crimes, though, that are committed. And one man is going to be found guilty and executed for his role for committing war crimes on the part of the Confederacy during the war. His name is Henry Wirz, Major Henry Wirz. This is him right here. Kind of a scary-looking guy, ain't he? He was the commander of the prisoner of war camp at Andersonville. During the Civil War, he had in his command tens of thousands of Union prisoners. While he was serving as commander at Andersonville, 45,000 Union soldiers starved to death. How many guys have ever seen pictures of the Holocaust? And you see the Jews at Auschwitz. Okay, you see this picture of these men who are skin and bones, and their stomach is sunk in almost to their back, to their spine. That is starvation. That is what happened to Union soldiers. As a result, Henry Wirz is found guilty, and he is executed. He is the only person to be executed for war crimes during Reconstruction. Mainly because his actions were so heinous that this is the proper action. Now, where did most of the war in the Civil War occur? Where most of the battles occur in the Civil War? Where did they occur? North or South? It occurred in the South. The South was outnumbered 4-1. They realized that. It takes less men to defend than it does to attack. Also, if they defended and the Union attacked, they could be seen as being the helpless ones, the ones who are being attacked. And they could play that into garnering support from foreign nations. That never happens because of the slave issue. However, they did try to do that. As a result, you have First and Second Battle of Bull Run, you have Chancellorsville, you have Chattanooga, you have Battle of Vicksburg, you have St. Petersburg, you have Fredericksburg. All these areas between Richmond here, where'd it go? Richmond here and Washington, D.C. right here. This whole area is going to be completely destroyed. It cannot produce any form of agriculture. There's no way that you can grow anything on it because it is just too contaminated. It is too torn up. We'll run into the same problem after the end of World War I, in which we become the breadbasket of America and we supply all of Europe with grain. It has detrimental effects because once Europe gets back up on its feet, we continue making that same amount and it leads directly to the Great Depression. We'll talk more about that when we get there. This land is obliterated. It cannot be used for anything. Major cities are destroyed. Chattanooga, Columbia, Atlanta, Savannah, Charleston. Major ports are completely demolished. Now, why is that important for the South? Why are these major cities in the South? Right.
What? Why are they major cities?
Yes.
Like the ports?
Yes.
Because they have to export their cotton.
They have to export their cotton. What type of nation, or excuse me, what type of region is the South? What is their focus? What do?
Agriculture.
Agriculture. They are an agrarian society. Everything is based around agriculture. Therefore, they need some way to get that to market. The major markets are overseas. If you cannot use the harbors because they are completely destroyed, the loading docks, the warehouses, all of that, you cannot sell your goods. We'll get some more reasons about why you can't sell your goods in a few minutes. But there's no capital to rebuild. Now, at the start of the Civil War, the South had one factory. It was in Richmond, Virginia, and it was a smelter where they melted iron ore down and they made different things out of iron. Okay. Back during the turn of the 19th century, 1806, Thomas Jefferson passes the Embargo Act, says we're not going to deal with England and we're not going to deal with France because you guys are impressing our sailors. We don't want to deal with you. Okay? As a result, the economy of the United States crashes because we didn't have any way to make anything. We did not have an industrial component to our nation. Now, after the War of 1812, we start realizing that we had started, when Americans were denied the ability to import goods, they turned inward and started making it themselves. In the North, that started the first industrial revolution for the United States. In the South, they're like, not so much. We're going to concentrate on agriculture. Okay, they're still growing tobacco at this time. Cotton is too difficult to do. Okay, more on that in a second. In the North, let me rephrase it. There's no way, electricity has not been harnessed yet. The steam engine has not really taken off as a method of running machines. How are they going to create factories to run and to run looms, run sewing machines, things of this nature? How are they going to do it?
Rivers.
They're going to make it water-powered. Water power is going to run most 98% of the factories. And in order to do that, you need to base these near rivers. Now, in the North, it's rocky, it's hilly, rivers run fast. In the South, not so much. As a result, in order to make these water wheels run, to generate the energy that is going to run these looms, these sewing machines, what have you, you need a fast-moving river. So industry takes off in the North, not so much in the South. Therefore, when the Civil War is over, the Civil War, again, has no factories. They do not have a way to generate the income that they need to rebuild. We've already touched on all the agricultural land that has been destroyed. And to make matters worse, any goods that you are able to make, say in Alabama, up here, you're not going to be able to get to market. Why?
Railroads.
Railroads are destroyed. You see these railroads right here, the green and the red. This is the South. Okay? How many railroads are there? There are a lot. There are a lot of railroads there? Okay, Jason. You're playing along. You're actually participating. Look at this. This is the South. Can you see these red marks right here? This is the North Railroad, the web of railroads. Now compare up here to down here. You may not be able to see it. Compare the two. Who has the most? The North has the most. To make matters worse, during the Civil War, a man by the name of William Tecumseh Sherman had gone from Chattanooga to Atlanta to Savannah to Charleston to Columbia. As he marched through these areas, he left a 40-mile wide path of destruction, destroying everything in their path: the cities, the lands, any livestock they found. And when they came across railroads, they destroyed them. Now, how many guys have ever stood on a railroad? You guys ever stood on a railroad? If you've never stood on a railroad, you've missed your calling in life. Okay? I'm not saying when a train's coming, that's stupid. Okay? How many guys have ever examined how a railroad is built? Is it difficult to build a railroad? No. You have a railroad tie. You have a little plate that the railroad tie goes on, and then you hammer that down, that railroad plate, and then you put the iron bar on it. Actually, I think you put the iron bar on it, and it's got a little lift that you hammer that down, and then it keeps it all together. So how hard is it then to go and destroy a railroad? It's not. You go, you grab all the guys at 1, 2, 3, pull up, take it, and then you throw it over to the side. You move on. But what's the problem there? The guy whose railroad you just built comes along with some of his buddy, puts it back down, hammers it there, and you're gone. You're done. Okay? What Sherman's men did is they ripped up the railroads, they took giant fires, and then they threw the iron rails in the fire. They waited until the iron rails got white hot, they were glowing, and what happens with iron when it starts to glow? It gets extremely hot.
Malleable.
It becomes very, very malleable. Okay, so what happens is Bill over here and Ted over there get together, and they grab one end of the rail, the fire is in the middle, and it's glowing, and they pull it out, they start walking towards one another. And the straight rail now looks something like that. What happens when it cools down? The only way you can fix it is to take it to an ironworks factory, smelt it down, and then recast it. Can you do that in the South? No. Why not? There's only one that exists, and it's in Richmond. So these railroad lines are completely and utterly destroyed. Now, one of the things I love about the United States, and people complain about this. I think it's hilarious that they complain about this. I don't know why. One of the things I love about the United States is that whenever there is a disaster, who are the first people there? We are. Okay? There was on the Black Sea, there is a country called Georgia. Don't confuse it with, the Georgia right here. But there was an epidemic. I think there was a revolution put down, and there were waterworks were completely destroyed. The United States sailed up a water tender to their port and provided water to the Georgians. When Haiti, the earthquake hit Haiti, was a year or 2 years ago, the U.S. Navy and the Marines were there within 24 hours to help. When the tsunami hit Japan, we had 2 carrier groups in the area, and they went and they protected, and they helped look for people. That's what we do. Okay? But it always wasn't that way. People make fun of us for saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. Why are you Americans always going over and we're saving people?" That's kind of like what the United States. That's kind of like what we do. All right. After the Civil War, this mindset did not exist. At this time, there was a concept called rugged individualism. All right? Rugged individualism. What that means is that you are responsible for you. You lose your job, don't go to the government and ask for welfare. The government doesn't exist to do that. That's stupid. Why would the government help you out? All it's going to do is make you live off of the government. All right? How many guys have ever heard the phrase, somebody is a self-made man. He pulled himself up from his bootstraps. All right? Anybody wearing boots? Who's wearing boots? Anybody wearing boots in here today? Not girl boots. We want real boots. Are they real boots? Are they real boots?
They're just.
Okay, they're Justin boots. All right. I had a girl here. Her said, "I wear boots," and she had these little laces and things on. Those aren't real boots. Okay. No, she's got real riding boots on. She's got ropers on. Okay. On the end zone, what do you got? Bootstraps. Have you ever sat down, put your boots on, and tried to pull yourself up? Could you do it?
Yeah.
You think you could? Sit down on the ground.
Well, I couldn't pull myself all the way.
That's what I'm saying.
My leg.
It's hard. Yeah, she could pull your leg off the ground. We know that. All right. So what I'm saying here now is that somebody who pulled themselves up from their bootstraps, somebody who did something very difficult, and they are a self-made man. They are the only one responsible for who they are. Okay. Probably what you call those 1% today that the occupiers are so upset about. How dare people excel in life, when I've made choices that have led me not to excel in life. All right. I'm sorry, Jordan. I know you're a fan of the occupiers. 1%. You do want to be a history major. There's a pointless degree right there.
Yeah, I know.
Can't do anything with it. All right. So. Here's the problem. After the Civil War, a sizable portion of the Southern population isn't doing anything. They're just lounging around. They're just hanging out. Kind of like you guys on spring break. Heck, they're kind of like you during the academic year. What are you doing? Laying in the sun, not doing anything. Somebody says, "Hey, go do this." You're like, "Well, whatever." Who are these people? Who are they?
Freedmen.
They're the freedmen. Why are these former slaves who are now free not doing anything?
They want us to keep it on.
What? Come on.
They want us
They want to take it all in. They're just enjoying it. All right? And what'd you say?
They don't know how.
Okay, well, there's a certain percentage is that they don't know how. Okay? But here's the deal. If I was a slave, and I have 5 kids. My wife and I have 5 kids. And my kids were sold into slavery, were sold because they're slaves to other people. And I could not go find them. You know what the first thing I would do would be? And my wife was sold. You know what the first thing I would do is? I'd say, "You're free." What do you mean free? It means you don't work. You are not forced to work here anymore. Seriously? Yeah. You know what the first thing I'm going to do is? We'll find my family and get us back together. Okay? And a vast percentage of African Americans did that. It's called the Black Diaspora. Okay? Because a vast percentage of them go out and try to find their families. Others just kind of lounge around and don't do anything. "Hey, what's going on, man? Yeah. Hey, get to work." "No, I don't work for you, man. You're going to pay me." "I'm not going to pay you." "Yeah, you are. You have to." Why? Because they're not owned by plantation owners anymore. Bless you. Now, to help the freedmen adapt to their new life, the government is going to create the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau is designed to provide medical assistance, teach these former slaves how to farm, and is going to basically help them adapt to their new lives. It is led by General Oliver Otis Howard. The name like Oliver Otis. He goes by O.O. And if you've ever heard someone say, after the Civil War ended, every freedman was promised 40 acres and a mule. Have you ever heard that? It didn't actually come from the government. It came from Oliver Otis Howard, this guy right here. He's the one who, as you can see here, you've got the African Americans on one side, you've got the angry farmers on the other side. And look, I don't know how well you can see this, but they're all wearing their Confederate gear. And you have the freedmen with pitchforks and all farm utility items, and he's standing in the way with between them with his hand out saying, "Stop, go no further." He's protecting them, and the flag of the United States is facing, is attached to the side that is on the freedman side. Now, in addition to this, the 13th Amendment is going to be added to the Constitution, which abolishes slavery in 1865. Now, wait a minute, you say. What about the Emancipation Proclamation? Emancipation Proclamation was was issued in 1863 by Lincoln, and as a result, slavery was abolished. Why are they doing this now? Who can tell me?
It abolished slavery in the South, but not everywhere.
It abolished slavery in areas that had been conquered by the Union Army. At first, it pertained to the areas where they were taking them over and they were defeated. Once the Civil War was over, it pertained to the entire South. Now, see, Lincoln, as commander-in-chief of the military, could make a statement like that because once these states were conquered, they were no longer states, they were conquered territories. And conquered territories existed under martial law. And as commander-in-chief of the military, he was able to say, this is how it is. Okay? However, he could not say, hey, slavery is abolished everywhere. He cannot do that. That is him overstepping his bounds as president. He did not have that authority. So in 1865, slavery is abolished in all of the nation. Now I know probably in high school you were told that the South was the only state that had slaves. That is not, I mean, the South was the only area of the nation that had slaves. That is not true. It is where slavery flourished because it was a agrarian society and they needed the slaves to run the plantations. In the North, not so much. Why? Because it's not an agrarian society. Were there slaves? Absolutely. But they were not anywhere in the number as they were in the South. So, now that the Civil War is over, we have to figure out what we're going to do. In 1864, before the Civil War was even close to being won, if you remember from 1301, 1864 was a scary year for Lincoln. He was facing re-election, and he did not have any major victories on the part of the Union Army to show for it. It's not until August of 1864, November is the election, that two major events happened. Battle of Mobile Bay and the march through Georgia, the capture of Atlanta on the part of the Union. That really secured for him the a second term. But before that, in 1864, he rolls out his plan for Reconstruction. He says, all right, this is known as Presidential Reconstruction. He's the president. It's his plan, Presidential Reconstruction. He says, all right, the worst thing that we could do now is once the Civil War is over that we go in and we say, you started this, you're guilty, we're going to punish you, and we're going to make you regret that you ever stood against the might of the United States. You were wrong. We're going to punish you for a long, long time. Says that's the worst thing that can happen, which is rather sad because what happens? That's what occurs. All right? But see, here's the deal. Lincoln introduces his plan, and it's a very simple plan. He says, once 10% of the men in a Confederate state, once 10% of the men in a Confederate state have sworn allegiance, have taken an oath to the United States, that state comes back into the Union. Okay? 10% of the men in a Confederate state swears an oath of allegiance to the United States, they come back in. We will readmit them. Okay? Well, that's not too bad, is it? 10%. That's a small number. It's pretty good, don't you think? Like that plan? Good? No, why? Do they need to pay?
Well, yeah.
Why do they need to pay?
Well, I mean, like 10% would be like 5 people in this classroom.
Actually, it'd be like 3.5.
Okay. Well.
That reflect the majority.
Well, but was the majority of citizens on the side of... in Texas, we had a sizable portion of people, especially up near Dallas and in around New Braunfels, that were extremely against what Texas did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a very sizable percentage. They were completely against seceding.
It's not the majority.
It isn't the majority, yeah. But see, Lincoln was Lincoln. Lincoln is the one who won the Civil War. He was the president who won the Civil War. So he had a certain gravitas that when he walked into a room, people were like, hey, there's the president, he won the war! You know, like, yeah, that's how I know. He got a little swagger, okay? All right? That's what? That's how he rolls? That's how he rolls. I mean, not everybody can pull such a high-top hat off. You know? He can do it. That and the beard that without the mustache part, that's gotta have a certain face to pull that off. Now, Congress didn't like this plan. Congress didn't like this plan. See, in Congress, they had a problem. They didn't see it as a problem, but they had a problem. In Congress, there were not many Democrats. Why? They're pretty much all from the South. So when they left, they weren't there anymore. So basically, everybody that was in the Union and that was left were Republicans. To a certain extent, there were some Democrats, but the vast majority of the representatives in Congress were Republicans. And the problem is that they did not have anyone to counteract anything they wanted to do. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Because there was no one to tell them, that's a stupid idea. You're an idiot. Everybody said, ooh, yeah, that's great, that's great. You guys ever heard of yes men? Doesn't matter what somebody says to the boss. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great idea. I think I should jump off this building. What do you think? Yeah, that's wonderful. That's great. That's fantastic. Jump. Go for it. Okay? No, that's stupid. You can't fly. You're going to die. All right? So as a result, the people that come into Congress are like, no, these are the South. These are traitors. These are people who declare war against the United States, and therefore they need to be punished. They need to be made to pay, and that payment should be extensive. All right? We don't need a 10% plan. We need a 50% plan. Instead of a 10% oath, we need an ironclad oath. An oath that says 50% of the American, of the Confederate States will never take up arms against the North ever again. Okay? It'll never happen again. 50%. Now, Congress's plan was introduced in the Wade-Davis Bill of 1864. And it said, ironclad oath. Now, I see I got it up there. I didn't actually put it into words. I'm sure you probably got it. But the type of Republicans that were in Congress were very radical in their beliefs. That's why they're known as radical Republicans. They're far to the extreme, okay? On the far, we need to make them pay. We should punish them so that something like this will never happen again. Now, the Wade-Davis bill is introduced. The House passes it. The Senate passes it. It goes to the President. It lands on his desk. And then Congress adjourns. Well, the Wade-Davis bill goes against Lincoln's old plan, doesn't it? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So what Lincoln does is say, I'm not going to sign this. That would be stupid. So because Congress is no longer in session, he takes it and he puts it into his pocket and he pocket vetoes it, right? Which is a right the president has. When a bill lands on his desk, he has like 10 days to sign it. If he doesn't sign it within those 10 days, it is dead. Now, can you override a regular bill when Congress is in session? Yes, it takes 2/3 vote of each house. Can you override a bill when Congress is not in session? No. Why not? Congress isn't in session. How are they going to do it? So he pocket vetoes the bill. The Wade-Davis bill is introduced in July of 64. It passes in 64. Congress had adjourned. They come back in August. They are furious that Lincoln that Lincoln pocket vetoed their bill, and they respond with the Wade-Davis Manifesto. And in the Wade-Davis Manifesto of August 1864, Congress comes out and says the president is overstepping his bounds. He needs to remain in the limits of his constitutional authority to obey and execute the laws passed by Congress, not make laws himself. Okay? They're saying that Lincoln is overstepping his bounds. Lincoln responds saying, no, I'm not. I, in Article 2 of the Constitution, am made Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Right? Nod your heads, yes. Okay. Made Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. I am the guy who calls the shots in the military and anything that happens militarily. In the South, they are conquered provinces. Military rule is there. I decide when military rule is over. That is my role as president, as commander-in-chief. And because he is the president who won a massive re-election in 1864, because he is the president that won the Civil War, he's gotten a certain amount of swagger. You know, he can pull this off. All right? Doesn't last long. April 14th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd, go to see a play at Ford Theater in Washington, D.C. General Grant and his wife were supposed to go with them, and they begged off at the last minute. I think she was sick. So they just went by themselves, and they sat in the presidential box. Well, at the play that they were seeing, there was a man by the name of John Wilkes Booth, who was a member of a conspiracy to assassinate the president, and actually go a little further, to assassinate all of his cabinet. The reason being is they believe that he had overstepped his bounds as president, and this is the only way to deal with the tyrant. Since he was a member of the play, he knew when the applause would be the loudest for the events happening on the stage. As a result, he snuck into the president's box, had a small little derringer, and when the audience started laughing at something humorous that happened on the stage, he pulled the trigger and shot Lincoln in the back of the head. He then jumped from the president's box onto the stage, which is like right next to the president's box is right here, and then the stage is like right here. But his spurs that he's wearing for his character caught in the bunting on the president's box. As he jumps, he yells, "Sic semper tyrannis," which happens to be Virginia's state motto, but it also is what Brutus yelled when he stabbed Caesar in the back in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants. Because his spurs catch in the bunting, he lands wrong and he breaks his ankle. He's able to stumble out and escape. He is found in a warehouse and tried and found guilty for the execution of the president. Lincoln would pass away a little bit later, but he never regains consciousness. Now, while Lincoln was alive, Congress couldn't do anything. That's changed. Back when Lincoln ran for office in 1861, he had a man by the name of Harry Hamlin, who was his vice president. After the Civil War starts, and he's up for re-election, he drops Hamlin and chooses Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson is a rather interesting individual. Johnson is from Tennessee. When Tennessee secedes from the Union in 1861, Johnson remains in his seat as senator. He doesn't agree with Tennessee. In 1864, Lincoln chooses Johnson to be his vice presidential candidate as a statement to the Confederacy, saying, look, hey, there's no hard feelings here. Come on back. We're brothers. Let's be brothers again. I've chosen one of your own to be my vice president. Come back, and we will work together to fix any wrongs that we may have. Now, when Lincoln dies, it is soon apparent that Johnson is no Lincoln. Because he had served in the Senate and he had been against secession to begin with, the radicals in Congress say, hey, he is going to choose our plan. He's going to side with us and make the South pay, instead of adopting Lincoln's plan of just bringing them in and repairing them, rather, putting them back into statehood rather quickly. However, he soon shows his stripes and he sides with Lincoln's policy, the 10% plan, instead of what the congressional Republicans thought that he would do, and side with them. It makes them mad. Now, because of this, he instantly sets himself at odds with Congress. Now, the radicals now realize that the game has changed. They set about starting to test the president to see what he will do. What are you going to do? We're going to poke you here, 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 we're going to poke you here. What are your actions? Because they want to steal the plum of Reconstruction away from the president and make it their own. All right, to make the South pay. The first fire in this battle between the President and Congress, the first shot, occurs in the Freedmen's Bureau Bill of 1866. In 1866, Congress passes the Freedmen's Bureau Bill, which extends indefinitely the life of the organization. Right? See, originally the Freedmen's Bureau Bill was designed to be a temporary measure, a temporary agency to get the former slaves, the freed slaves, acclimated to the new culture, teach them a skill, get them a job perhaps, and take care of any medical issues perhaps that they have, and to take care of those issues. And then once that was done, it would disappear. What happens in the Freedmen's Bureau Bill is that Congress says this organization is going to be needed forever. We're going to make this a permanent entity. Well, Johnson says, wait a minute, we are millions of dollars in debts, and this is not something that is really constitutional. I don't see any need for us to do this. So he vetoes the Freedmen's Bureau Bill. And since he vetoes the bill, what happens if a bill is vetoed? And not pocket vetoed, it's regularly vetoed. What occurs?
Have to revise it.
Well, it doesn't have to be revised. It goes back to the House and the Senate, and by a 2/3 vote of each chamber, they can override the bill. It goes, it is not overridden. Okay, it doesn't get the vote. Next, Congress passes the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Civil Rights Act extends a lot of citizenship benefits to African Americans. Okay? Things that are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution are mentioned, are given to the former slaves. Johnson vetoes this, saying that this is not constitutional. He does not believe this to be constitutional because it is Congress giving individual rights to a group of citizens. If you go into the Constitution, you have to look. Anytime the Constitution, anytime Congress does something, it has to draw a line to the Constitution that says, here is why we are doing this. We want to make sure that we have an army. The Constitution says we can do it. Here's the line to the section of the Constitution. If not, it's unconstitutional. Now, usually, well, actually, all the time, the people who make something unconstitutional are the Supreme Court, the members of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declares things unconstitutional. Constitution is like a steel cage. A constitutional battle is kind of like a steel cage match between. I said Hulk Hogan in the last class, and they had no clue who he was. Okay, Hulk Hogan versus whoever. I know Hulk Hogan's still wrestling because I saw him a couple of days ago. He's like 98. He's still wrestling. The 24-inch pythons aren't quite as big as they used to be. In the old days, in my understanding, is muscles, the biceps are supposed to go up, they're not supposed to hang down like down here. But, I don't know. So what happens here, it's like a steel cage match, okay? Hulk Hogan is the Constitution, and whoever he's facing. You know darn well that whenever you go into that steel cage match, that Hogan might get beat up, he might get knocked down, he might get chained to the cage, but before the other guy gets out of the cage and claims the championship belt, he's going to Hulk out, he's going to break the chains, he's going to get out there before the other guy and win. Why? Because he's Hulk Hogan. Same thing. Constitution. Something goes against the Constitution. Who wins? Constitution. Why? Because it's the Constitution. It is the highest law in the land. It is where rights come from. It is where rights that are given to us by nature are promised and guaranteed. Okay? Congress can't say, hey, you can do this. They can't do that. That's unconstitutional. They don't have the authority to do that. That is why Johnson vetoed the Civil Rights Bill of 1866. Okay? Now, Congress responds. They take it out of the President's hands, and instead of making it a bill, they take the items for the Civil Rights Bill that is vetoed and fails because they can't override it, and they make it an amendment. It is going to be ratified and become our 14th Amendment. First thing it does is it provides citizenship to freedmen. And actually, when I finish this class, I'm going to go back here, I'm going to do this right here. Because this is the most important thing here that does that. See, originally...
Is that all we need to know? Just those two.
Did you hear that question? Can you believe she asked that? You can't believe she asked that? I can't believe that. Is that all you need to know? Everything I say in class is the most important thing you know. Okay. How do we go with that one? All right.
Yeah, we didn't know about Hulk Hogan, right?
Hey, is it good? Do you know what constitutionality means?
That was probably the worst analogy you've ever made.
Are you trying to make my class? Are you going to try to stay in my class the rest of the semester?
Hey, you know what? Okay, do you have any more 1302s? Do you have another class?
Yeah.
Okay. How about an LSU Alabama analogy?
No, because I'm not going to mention anything of that nature.
That's what he's trying.
Was a good try, wasn't it?
That was good.
I got 2 minutes left. All right. As originally written, federal government was here. That doesn't work. States are here. Citizens are here. Okay? States affected citizens quite a bit. All right? Federal government, not so much. When the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, are added to the Constitution, they apply to the state. They apply to the states. They do not apply to you as a citizen. What that means is tell me one of the rights guaranteed to you in the First Amendment. Freedom of speech. That means you can say, to a certain extent, whatever you want, and the federal government cannot punish you. Right? But as it was originally written, that was only as a federal citizen. If I went and I said to our federal government, I don't like you, this is what you're doing that's wrong, and I disagree with you, the federal government could not do anything because you were exercising your First Amendment rights. However, you go to your state government and say, hey, I don't like you, I don't like what you're doing, I don't think that's right. And they said, okay, thank you very much, you're going to jail. Okay? Because the Bill of Rights did not apply to the states as originally written. All states had a Bill of Rights in their Constitution that provided similar guarantees. Texas is Article 1 of our state Constitution, is our Bill of Rights, what the state will do to the citizen and what the state can't do to the citizen. What happens now is the 14th Amendment applies the Bill of Rights to the states. And of course what that does is it provides those freedmen protection from the states. Okay? It says what you cannot do. If you're walking down the street and you are an African American and a police officer comes up to you and says, "Hey, you got an iPod on you." "Yes, yes, sir, I do." "Let me see it." "Okay, oh yeah, sure." "Here it is." "So thank you, I always wanted an iPod," and he walks off. Okay, can he do that? No, because that is your property, and property cannot be taken from you without due process. Okay? Now, prior to the 14th Amendment, the states could do whatever they wanted. Now, because of this, they can't. Now, I know somebody will say, well, they still did. Yes, you are right. And that is why civil rights and civil liberties play such an integral role in this semester, because it is the process of working towards those goals. Yes, it's stated, but unfortunately, it is not something that is always enforced. So in addition to that, it tried to give African Americans the right to vote, but it is not successful in the way that it is written. It did, however, disenfranchise rebel leaders. Anyone who had been connected to the United States, to the Confederacy, lost their rights to vote. And that is what disenfranchisement or franchise means. Robert E. Lee lost his right to vote because he was a leader of the Confederacy. Now, one of the major things that it did is it stated that the rebel states had to pay their own debts. Why is that important? Who can tell me the process of an area becoming a state in the Union? What is the process?
You need like a certain amount of people.
You need 5,000 people living in an area to qualify to be allowed to write up a constitution, and when that 5,000 becomes 60,000, you can apply for statehood. Okay, 5,000 is territory status, 60,000 is statehood. Now, what happens when you become a state? A territory becomes a state. What happens?
They pay off your debt.
They pay off your debt, and you give them their public lands. Happens to everybody except for Texas. All right? But that's the law in the books. See, what happens is during the Civil War, all these states started racking up debt like crazy because they don't have anything. They don't have any hard currency. So they're substantially in debt. So now that they're looking at coming back in, they're like, hey, the laws on the books state that you have to take our debts. The Union didn't want to pay their debts because they were debts that were incurred while fighting against their rightful government. So they said, no, we're not going to do it. And then the state said, it's the law. You have to. Okay? So what they do is instead, what the radical Republicans do is that there's one way to beat a congressional law or a Supreme Court decision. We'll talk about this when we get a little further. And that is to add an amendment to the Constitution. And that's what they do here. Also, they kind of tack this on with the 14th Amendment. They trump a law. What's higher than the law? A Supreme Court decision or an amendment to the Constitution. And they say states will pay their own debts. All right? So that's kind of like the sticking you in the eye right there. Now, how is this received? Well, it's not received well in the South. They don't like it. They don't like it. You'll start seeing people trying to do things to get around it. How many guys saw The Help? Okay, excellent movie. It really needs to be something that everybody watches because that's the 60s. That's the 60s. We're not talking 1865. We're talking 1965, 100 years. And people still fear, going to use a bathroom after an African American has, ooh. There's just a whole bunch of craziness in the South at this time. So you see the states adopt laws that are considered to keep basically African Americans in their place. One of these black codes is that you are not allowed to seek a job elsewhere. Where you work is where you work. You can't go and find another job somewhere else. Now, what does that remind you of? If your boss, how many of you guys have a job? Okay. So your boss comes to you and says, you, by law of the state of Texas, are not allowed to go seek employment elsewhere. What are you going to do? You're not going to like that, are you? Okay. How is that any different than slavery? Oh, sure, it's different from slavery. You're free to do whatever you want to as long as you don't leave here. And we do pay you, so that's nice. Give you some money. Give you some. Next, African Americans were prevented from working in certain areas of employment. Okay? You could only do certain jobs. Why? Why? You hear this all the time now. The rhetoric is very similar. Why do we need to close the border with Mexico? Because what's going on? Well, these people are coming over here. These Mexicans are coming over here. They're taking jobs from white people. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the same thing, right? Yeah. When was the last time you saw a white or an African American guy on top of a roof in August in Texas being a roofer? Huh? When did you see that happen last time? Okay. Problem is that these individuals who are coming over here are doing the exact same thing that that your ancestors did. They came over here to do what? Find a better life. They may not be doing it legally, but most likely someone in here's family didn't do it either. Should we, start throwing stones? Okay, so you weren't allowed to work in certain places. You weren't allowed to leave your job in certain different states. Now, these laws were all different among the states. So, if you're like, oh, Texas didn't do that. Some of them they did, some of them they didn't. Some I can tell you that they did do is they did the grandfather clause. You know what the grandfather clause is? You go to vote. The first question they ask you is, hey, did your granddad vote? Well, you're African American before the Civil War. Did your granddaddy vote? No, he was a slave. Oh, sorry. You can't vote because that's the grandfather rule. You had to be home by a certain time. If you wanted to vote, you had to be able to read the ballot. If you couldn't read the ballot, well, sorry, you can't pass the literacy test. You're not going to vote. We're not going to let you do that. All these laws were created in the South to try to keep African Americans down. Now, we'll talk more about those over the course of the semester. The 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. Now, in the election of November 1866, Congress gets a two-thirds vote, gets two-thirds control of the House and the Senate. What that means is that they are now capable of overriding anything that the President sends to them. To make matters worse, the radical Republicans are going to be joined by a group that is more radical than the radicals. And because they're more radical than the radicals, we're going to call them ultra-radicals. And the ultra-radicals are led by Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner has an interesting history. He is from Massachusetts. He was a very eloquent speaker. He was renowned for his ability to turn a phrase and was a brilliant orator. In 1854, when the Kansas-Nebraska Act was introduced, allowing the people of Kansas to decide whether or not they are going to be free or slave, Kansas erupted in violence. To protest this, Charles Sumner took the floor of the Senate and gave perhaps definitely his most renowned speech of all time, because we still talk about in 1301, the Crime Against Kansas speech, in which he calls out the character and the quality of a fellow senator from South Carolina. He was an old guy, wasn't going to do anything about it. However, he had a hot-blooded nephew named Preston Brooks in the House of Representatives. Preston Brooks was not going to let a slight of that nature on his family's name go unpunished. So he goes into the Senate floor with his cane. All gentlemen carried canes back then. and they went up to tap him on the shoulder, but he approaches him from the back. And before he gets there, his anger consumes him so that he loses all control and beats the living crap out of Charles Sumner, cracks his skull. Sumner goes back to Massachusetts for 2 years. And then when he returns, whenever he gives a speech on the floor, he speaks with a stutter. Okay? Why? He's a brilliant orator. He's known for his ability to speak. And all of a sudden, he starts stuttering when he gives a speech. People say, why is he stuttering? Because one of those Southerners beat him upside the head. What do you expect from a Southerner? They're all traitors and and murderers. So the ultra-radicals are led by Charles Sumner. The regular radicals, just the regular radicals, they are led by Thaddeus Stevens. Here we are here. Now, because these two are both Republicans, they just disagree with what their plans are. I say we should cut their left hand off. Oh, that's not enough. Let's cut their entire arm off. Let's make sure we punish them substantially. Now, Congress, when it comes back into session, they're going to create what is called their Council of 15. Their Council of 15 is going to be the organization that runs congressional reconstruction. But before they can get to that point, they have to start setting up the stage for their war with the president. Okay? So, how are they going to do it? They start off with the Congressional Sessions Act of 1864. Now, it still rankles them that the Wade-Davis bill was pocket vetoed by Lincoln. So, what they're going to do in the Congressional Sessions Act of 1867 is they are going to make it law that as soon as one congressional session ends, the next one begins. Okay? See, when Washington was president, Congress met 6 months out of the year of a 2-year term. Okay? So 6 months they're in office, 18 months they're out of office. How long does Congress meet now, today, 2012? Year-round, constantly. Okay? The president can't really pocket veto things. If you paid attention to the news within the last couple of weeks, I guess 4 weeks now, what did President Obama do while Congress was on break for Christmas? What did he do?
National Defense Authorization Act?
He did do that, but he has that authority. He has that authority to do that. That was a bill given to him by Congress.
He vetoed something. I can't remember exactly what.
He vetoed the pipeline, which was yesterday. Let's go back a little bit further. It involves his power of placing people in authority. Okay? Filling vacancies. The president can fill vacancies when Congress is not in session to members of the executive branch. However, when the executive branch comes back into session, the Senate has to appoint them. Okay? They have to confirm the appointment. Now, there is a law on the books from way back into Harding's administration that says the session, as long as there are not 3 days concurrently in which the Senate is not meeting, they are in session. So what happened is over the break, a member of the Senate would go in every 3 days and gavel the Senate into session, and then later adjourn the meeting. Now, since they did it every 3 days, the president theoretically did not have the authority to use his recess appointment powers. However, that didn't stop him. He did it anyway and said, what are you going to do about it? Well, now that Congress is back in session and the Senate is controlled by the Democrats, most likely what they're going to do anyways, because it only requires 51% of the 100 senators, is they're just going to say, he's got it anyway. The Republicans made some noise about opposing the president and taking it to court. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But in 1867, to keep the president from using the authority to pocket veto when Congress is not in session, the Congressional Sessions Act is passed that says Congress begins their next session the day after a regular session ends. Pocket veto doesn't matter anymore, okay? Next is the Command of the Army Act of 1867. The Command of the Army Act of 1867. And in the Command of the Army Act of 1867, the commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, at this time, General Ulysses S. Grant, is made completely independent of the President. Okay? Now, what did I tell you about the President a little bit ago and his role as Commander-in-Chief? What does he do? If you're a Commander-in-Chief of something, what are you? You're the boss, right? You're the boss. And that is what they are overturning here. They're saying, no, you're not. The President does not have this authority. He is the commander of the military, is independent of the President. Now, is that constitutional? No, it is not. However, Johnson really can't do anything about it. He could take he could take a suit to Congress, to the Supreme Court, but as you can see, he doesn't have much time left. Next is the Tenure of Office Act of 1867. The Tenure of Office Act of 1867. Now, what this does is it forbids the President from removing people on his cabinet from office. Okay? He is forbidden from removing people from office who are on his cabinet. Okay? Now, the way the President chooses members of his cabinet, he nominates them, the Senate with a simple majority confirms them, and they serve at the leisure of the President. That means when he doesn't like you anymore, you're gone. Case in point, War of 1812. Secretary of State James Armstrong freaks out, does not allow the President to send the military that is protecting Washington, D.C., which at this time period is not being attacked by British soldiers, to go along the East Coast and protect settlements from English ships that are landing their soldiers, landing their Marines, and raping the women and pillaging the city. He doesn't do it. He says, no, they got to stay here, they got to stay here. We have to protect Washington, D.C. Madison said, I'm the President, you do as they say. He says, no, I'm not going to let you do it. He says, you're fired. He has that authority. This is saying, no, you don't. See, they're laying a trap for Johnson, and he's going to fall into it. So, now that they've laid the trap, they're going to start baiting it. They announce that they, through the passage of the First Reconstruction Act of 1867, that they are taking command. They are taking command of Reconstruction. They are taking it from Johnson. Johnson vetoes it. Congress overrides it. By the time Johnson leaves office, he will have the distinct honor of being the president with the most overridden vetoes and the quickest overridden vetoes. At the end of his administration, from the moment he vetoes a bill to it being overridden, the quickest time is 30 minutes. Okay? He vetoes it, it goes back to Congress, Congress gets a 2/3 vote of the House and the Senate, 30 minutes. That's pretty darn quick. So in the First Reconstruction Act of 1867, the South is divided into 5 military districts. Now remember when I told you about the 10% plan, Lincoln's 10% plan, something I neglected to tell you that I'm remembering now, is that 3 states, as soon as they heard about this plan, they did it. They did the 10% plan, okay, under Lincoln. It was Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee. They said, woo, yeah, we're back in. 10%, no problem, we got it, we're done. The end. Okay? Lincoln says, sure, you've done it, you've met my guidelines, you're back in the Union. This act, the First Reconstruction Act of 1867, takes Arkansas, Louisiana, and Tennessee and kicks them out of the Union and makes them go into Reconstruction again. All right? is you're going to go into Reconstruction the way we want you to go through Reconstruction. Divides the South into five military districts, each ruled by a Union general, and military law serves. The military governor does not like you, he kicks you out of office. You are not allowed. It doesn't matter, you got a 4-year term, he doesn't like you, you're out. Now, remember when I said military leaders under the 14th Amendment are disenfranchised. They cannot vote. Well, guess what? They can't hold office either. So, what does that mean? That means that every single one of those former Confederate states, their state government needs people to run their government. And the people who used to hold those offices, by the fact that they were holding those offices during the time of the Confederacy, are therefore not allowed to, because they were what? Confederate leaders. Therefore, they have to, the local governments have to turn to other places to find people to fill these vacancies. Now, how many guys have seen Gone with the Wind? Okay. In Gone with the Wind, there is a scene where Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara are walking down the street, and this guy pulls up in a buggy, and he's got, the fancy mustache, and he's got like a bowler hat on, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, madam, would you please tell me where I can find the courthouse?" And Rhett goes, "Why, of course, sir. It is just that way." And he says, "Well, thank you. That is that's so kind of you." And you hear Scarlett saying, that damn carpetbag is coming into our state, taking over. Well, see, what happens is this man is from the North, because that is the only place we can find people to run the government, because everybody else has been kicked out. And the type of luggage that this man is carrying is a carpet bag. If you imagine I cut a giant section of this carpet up, and I folded it over, and I put a clasp on it, I would have a carpet bag. And that's what it was made of, that same type of stuff. See, here's the guy coming down, he's a carpetbagger coming down to the South. There are Northerners who came down to the South to hold Southern positions in the government. Second, even worse than carpetbaggers, are scalawags, which Rhett Butler was one of. And these are Southerners who sided with the Union during the Civil War. Because they had sided with the Union during the Civil War, they were free to hold these positions. And it doesn't go very well for them. Okay? Only thing worse than a carpetbagger is a scalawag. Because a carpetbagger can't help the fact that he was born in the North, but a scalawag made a decision to support the Union instead of the Confederacy. Okay? Now, the last couple of seconds of class. In 1870, the third of the 3 Civil War amendments is added to the Constitution. It is the 15th Amendment, which provides rights for African American males to vote in federal elections. Okay? It extends the right to vote to African American males in federal elections. Now, to oppose the growing power of African Americans, to oppose scalawags, and to oppose the growing number of carpetbaggers in the South, a new organization is going to appear. And it is created by Forrest Gump's great uncle. I'm guys seen Forrest Gump. Who's he named after? My name's Forrest Gump. Named after Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, one of the South's greatest Confederate generals, leader of cavalry. He cannot stand the growth of carpetbaggers, the growth of scalawags, and the growing sense of entitlement that these African Americans have in the South. So he creates a secret society to oppose them, and they are known as the Ku Klux Klan. Now, they're going to exist for a while, they're going to disappear, they're going to come back in the 20s. But they start during Reconstruction to oppose Northern rule. That is where we end for the day. Are there any questions? All right, have a good weekend.